All right, so let's jump right in and set the scene here. Picture this. Jesus has just finished his final, really intense showdowns with the religious leaders in Jerusalem. He turns and he walks out of the temple for the very last time. And as he's leaving, his disciples, who are still kind of starstruck by the place, point out these incredible, magnificent buildings all around them. And then, bam! Jesus says something that must have just stopped them in their tracks. He looks at this amazing structure, literally the heart and soul of their entire nation and their faith, and he drops this bombshell of a prophecy. Complete and utter destruction. Not one single stone left on top of another. And you've got to understand their shock. This wasn't just any old building. I mean, the historian Josephus said it was covered in so much gold it would blind you in the sunlight. This was a massive public works project that took over 80 years and 10,000 men to finish. To them, the idea of it being totally torn down was, well, it was basically impossible, unthinkable. And what's just mind-blowing is that fast forward about 40 years, and it happens, exactly, as he said. When the Romans sacked Jerusalem, the temple caught fire. All that gold melted and ran down between the cracks of these massive stones. So, to get the gold, the Roman commander gave the order, take it apart, stone by stone. This literal, perfect fulfillment is the key. It's the lens we need to look through to understand everything else he's about to say. I mean, you can't just drop a bomb like that and walk away, right? Of course not. So the disciples follow Jesus out of the city, up to the Mount of Olives. And there, with this stunning view of the temple in the background, they come to him privately. They've got questions, and these questions are going to be the foundation for this entire prophecy. They ask him what sounds like two simple questions, but man, these are the questions, right? The ones people have been asking ever since. First, when is the temple going to be destroyed? And second, what's the sign? The sign that you're coming back and that this whole chapter of history is about to end. Now here's what's so important to get. The disciples, they probably thought this was all one big event. The temple comes down, the world ends, you come back. The whole shebang. But as Jesus answers, he masterfully, so carefully separates these two very different questions. He's going to answer both, but they're on totally different timelines. So you'd think he'd jump right to the big sign they asked for, wouldn't you? Nope, that's not what he does. Instead, he starts by painting a picture of the general state of the world, things that are going to happen over and over, but are not the final signal. His first piece of advice is basically, hey, when you see this stuff start to happen, take a breath. Don't freak out. Don't let anyone deceive you. This is so important. He's saying, look, this stuff has to happen, but it's just the prelude. The end is not yet. And the list of things he mentions, well, it sounds a lot like the nightly news, doesn't it? He talks about false messiahs, wars, famines, diseases, earthquakes, persecution, and then he mentions this really chilling social decay. Lawlessness will just explode, and because of it, the love of many will grow cold. And the way he describes all this is just brilliant. He calls it the beginning of labor pains, and think about that for a second. Labor pains start, they're kind of far apart, not too intense, but as the moment of birth gets closer, they get stronger and closer together. That's the pattern he's laying out for these world events. Okay, so after setting the stage with all these general warnings, the labor pains, Jesus finally zooms in. He gives them the one single, you can't miss it sign they were actually asking for. This is the linchpin of the whole thing. So what on earth is this abomination of desolation? It sounds intense, right? Well, it's a term from way back in the book of Daniel, and it basically means the ultimate act of disrespect, of sacrilege. Someone setting up some kind of idol, an object of false worship, right there in the holy place of the temple. It's an abomination that kicks off God's judgment and brings desolation. And his instructions for when this happens are, wow. There is zero time to waste. He's not saying, hey, form a committee and discuss this. He's basically shouting, go. If you're in Judea, when you see this, run for the hills. Don't even go back in the house to grab a jacket. The urgency is just screaming off the page. This is life or death. So this one sign, this abomination, it's like the starting pistol for the final lap. What comes next is a period of suffering unlike any other, but it all leads up to a climax that is totally and completely unexpected. And Jesus is not holding back here. He says the time of suffering that follows the sign will be off the charts, unparalleled. Think of the worst things in human history. He says this will be worse than anything that has ever happened or ever will happen again. That is a heavy statement. But then, right after giving this specific sign and this intense timeline, he throws a massive curveball. That final ultimate day and hour of his return, nobody knows it. Not the angels, not even Jesus himself in his human ministry. Only the Father knows the exact time. So, do you see the problem here? It's like a puzzle. On the one hand, his return feels predictable. It follows all this crazy, chaotic stuff. You'd think you'd see it coming a mile away. But on the other hand, he says it's going to be a total surprise when people are just going about their normal lives, like in Noah's day. So, which one is it? How can both be true? Well, here's how many people make sense of this puzzle. They see it not as one single event, but as two distinct phases or events. First, a surprise return for believers at an unexpected hour, what's often called the rapture. And second, a visible, public, predicted return to the world that happens after all that tribulation, the second coming. That way, both of his descriptions can be completely true. Okay, so signs, tribulations, prophecies, it is a lot to take in. But at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway? What are we supposed to do with all this? Jesus boils it all down to one single practical piece of advice for everyone in every generation. He brings up Noah again. Think about it. What were people doing right before the world was flooded? They were eating, drinking, getting married, just living life. They were completely absorbed in their day-to-day, totally oblivious to the warnings, right up until the door to the ark slams shut. And Jesus says that's what his return is going to be like for a world that isn't paying attention. And then he tells this perfect little story to drive the point home. It's about two servants. The master goes away. The faithful servant just keeps his head down, does his job, and takes care of business, expecting the master back at any moment. But the other guy, he thinks, my boss is taking forever, and he starts slacking off, partying, and being a jerk. The results for each of them, well, they couldn't be more different. And that really is the bottom line, isn't it? The whole point of Matthew 24 isn't to give us a secret code to predict the future. It's not so we can make complicated charts. It's a wake-up call. It's meant to motivate us to be ready, right here, right now, to be found faithfully doing the work we were given. You know, the commentary sums it all up with this line that just nails it. The most dangerous lie isn't the big, loud one. There is no God. No, the really dangerous one is the quiet whisper. There's no hurry. That's the lie that puts you to sleep. That's the lie of the foolish servant. And that leaves us with the only question that really matters. It's not for scholars, it's for every single one of us. The master is coming back. We know that. The only question left is, when he gets here, which servant will he find? The faithful one or the foolish one?